The most outdated notion is to attend school, find a job, work harder, save money, eliminate debt, and invest for the long haul in the stock market. Look, why would you save money when they're printing trillions of dollars? Divide between the 1% and 99% is huge. It's not just about money. You need to take a step back and view the larger picture. So what should you do? Each one of us has a poor person within us. There's still a struggling person inside me. There's also a middle-class person, and the middle-class person desires security. They want that reliable paycheck. There's a wealthy person too. And they're all within us, except it's not emphasized. You're taught to attend school, find a job, and receive a paycheck. You're not taught how to become wealthy. You read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. My rich dad refused to pay me. The paycheck was one of the most harmful things you could accept in your life. It said that the moment you take a paycheck, you become an employee. And that's the mindset. So my rich dad never paid me. It drove my poor dad, a government worker, crazy. You have to pay people. You have to pay people. But Rich Dad wasn't saying that the paycheck was bad. He said, you didn't want to be a slave to money. So as an entrepreneur, if Rich Dad went under, I could just start another business. I don't need a paycheck. I don't need anyone to take care of me. If my government doesn't support me, I can move to another country because they need entrepreneurs there. So the entrepreneur is not just about the business. The entrepreneur is really the mindset, the skills, and a different set of rules. You see, I don't operate the same way. A small business does not function under the same rules as a big business. An entrepreneur has a mindset first, followed by skills and rules. Depending on whether you're an employee or a small business owner, the roles are different. The mindsets are different, and so are the skill sets. You could say one thing to someone who's never been an entrepreneur and is considering taking the leap into becoming one. What would you tell them? Well, I'll share the same experience that someone had. I still remember his last paycheck clearly. It was one of the worst and best days of his life. And he was in Puerto Rico, working for Xerox, and his boss handed him his last check. It wasn't a paycheck, it was a bonus check. He think it was about $30,000 taxable. That's the only downside. So he got this check and he thought, wow. You know what I mean? He was excited, but he was also unsettled. Then another guy came up to him. His name was John, and he said, you're gonna come back. He asked, why? Boss replied, because you're gonna fail. He looked at his boss and said, look, with a few choice words, because that's what he did. He left Xerox, struggled, and then returned. He said, look, you failed and came back. But I'm gonna fail and I'm never coming back. And that's the mindset. Do you know what he means? If you think, well, if I fail, I'll just go back to my parents, then that's exactly what you'll do. So when he failed, that's when he became an entrepreneur because he had no money. He was broke for years. Yeah, he didn't have a paycheck, but that's what my rich dad urged me to do. He said, when you don't have this paycheck, you become hungrier, smarter, and it tests your character. Will you become a thief? Will you be dishonest? Will you cheat and steal? Or will you become a better person? So really, that's the advantage of becoming an entrepreneur. You truly discover who you are when you have nothing. You always have to consider the big picture. Too many people focus on what's going to happen to me. When you look at the big picture, you'll also realize that when something bad occurs, something good will follow. But you have to prepare for whatever is ahead. If you believe the next 20 years will be like the last 20 years, you're going to be in trouble. You know, when we go to the supermarket and buy a carton of milk, we always check the expiration date, but most people don't check the expiration date on their minds. Instead of getting out of debt, I get into debt. I just refinanced $300 million in debt. I went from 5% to 2.5% interest. I made a fortune. Every month, more money comes in because my cost of borrowing has decreased. So while some financial experts advise getting out of debt, I say learn how to use debt. When I returned from Vietnam in January of '73, the first thing my rich dad told me was to go to school, to learn how to invest in real estate. It wasn't just about real estate, it was about how to use debt and taxes. Debt and taxes make the wealthy even wealthier. Debt and taxes make the poor and middle class poorer. All those rich people who are doctors and lawyers, they're getting squeezed, and they don't understand why. Doctors are getting squeezed. Oh yeah, they earn more money, but their take-home pay is less. Sure. My doctor just scolded me, but he's happy, he says. Oh, guess what? I finally made $1 million. I said, yeah, this was 3 weeks ago. So I asked, how much are you paying in taxes? He said $750,000 in taxes. So his net income was about $400,000. That's not bad, but when I make $1 million, I keep $1 million. The reason is that I don't earn it by working for money. See, if you work for money, you get taxed. That's why lesson number 1 in Rich Dad Poor Dad is that the rich don't work for money. What we do instead is create businesses as entrepreneurs. We purchase real estate. We don't invest in the stock market. The reason is that as entrepreneurs, I have more control over my income, how much I earn, and how much I pay in taxes. And because I'm an entrepreneur, as well as an investor in real estate, I pay no tax. So every time I make, let's say, $1 million as an entrepreneur, I immediately invested in real estate. I have a 4-to-1 leverage. So I put $1 million into real estate and get $4 million from the bank. That's why I love banks. But the banks are hurting everyone else. It's terrible, but it's good for me. That's why when they print money, it's beneficial for me. When they print, it's harmful for people who work for money. Because when they print, savers get squeezed and those who work for money get squeezed. When they print, borrowers get wealthy. See, debt and taxes make the rich even richer. Debt and taxes make the poor and middle class poorer. When we have outdated ideas, we get outdated results. So what's happening for most people is that the idea of going to school, finding a job, working hard, saving money, getting out of debt, buying a house because it's an asset, and investing for the long term is outdated. World has changed. World changed in 1971 when President Nixon removed us from the gold standard and money became debt. If we eliminated school, then what would happen? Would it be better if we had no education system at all? No. Saying that education is more important than before. It's just outdated. No, there's Moore's Law, which states that information doubles every 18 months. In other words, everything becomes outdated every 18 months. And this is a recent trend. So when you graduate from school, you're already outdated. That's why I'm the old guy. I meet my friends who went to Harvard, and they say, I went to Harvard. I reply, yeah, that was how long ago? 50 years? Today the banks are charging you interest in saving money. In other words, banks don't want your money because they printed too much of it. That's why there are bubbles in stocks and bubbles in real estate and all of this. People are getting rid of cash because, as I said here, savers are losers and cash is worthless. Yet people say, I want a high-paying job. That's an outdated idea. Getting out of debt, an outdated idea. You should learn how to take on debt, how to use debt, get wealthy. And they'll never teach you about taxes. The reason the 1% is so far ahead, and the 99% are going in this direction. It's because when you print money, 2 things happen, inflation and taxes. It's going to overwhelm them. And any entrepreneur who thinks, I'm just going to make money, I'll start a business and earn a lot because of what we discuss, really needs to wake up. That's not what real entrepreneurs are doing. Most entrepreneurs, there are 28 million small business owners in America. 24 million are solo entrepreneurs. They're known as non-employee entrepreneurs. And that's what happens when people don't truly understand what an entrepreneur does. So most successful people are self-employed, but they're not really entrepreneurs. Self-employed pay the highest taxes of all, and nobody informs them. It's also referred to as the entrepreneurial spirit. But what we were really discussing is that there's no such thing as a bad economy. Externally, we all have an outside economy, but we also have an internal economy. And the willpower is to change our internal economy. For me, I can see both the good and the bad. I don't really care because I'm going to be wealthy anyway, but a person with a weak personal economy, all they're going to see is a bad economy because they don't know how to earn money in any economy. A middle-class person has a middle-class economy. They want a nice house, a steady paycheck, a job, and a car. When you take their job away, to them, it's a disaster. Well, since an entrepreneur doesn't have a job anyway, it's no big deal. So all I'm saying to people, which is what Bucky Fuller taught me, is that there are always 2 sides. You know what I mean? To use plural means at least 2. So if you think the economy is bad, it's because your personal economy is bad. If you believe that steady employment is important, you'll notice an economy without jobs. Our economy versus the outside economy. What you control versus what you can't control. I can control that, yeah. It's called an internal focus versus an external focus. So the true entrepreneur has an internal focus. But if they stumble, they say, oh, this is good because I'm going to rise higher. The average person will fall down and think, oh, I'll take some Prozac. Or if someone makes a mistake, they say all mistakes don't matter. Well, mistakes do matter. It means you didn't know something. But a true entrepreneur, whether they stumble or not, always believes they can rise again. They can get back up and go higher. No matter what happens, they become stronger, better, smarter, and happier. But a person with a weak internal mindset is so afraid of what might happen that it usually does happen. For example, people who are afraid of losing their jobs often end up losing them. You know what I mean? Yeah, so everything comes from within you. So the entrepreneur's first job is to control what's inside, not what's outside. The moment you accept that paycheck, you become an employee. You've got to be stronger than that. It's about internal control.